ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהכל נהיה בדברו. A few days ago we commemorated Shiva Asar Betamuz, the 17th day of the Hebrew month of Tammuz. Why is that important? Because the wall around Jerusalem was pierced by the enemies that were surrounding the city of Jerusalem, and 3 weeks later the Beit HaMikdash, the temple of Jerusalem, was burnt, was destroyed. And that is the saddest day. That was Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, and is commemorated forever as a day of destruction for the Jewish people. It wasn't only that Beit HaMikdash in the year 70, it was also in the year 586, centuries before, the first Beit HaMikdash that had been built by King Solomon was also destroyed on such a date, the 9th day of Av. So we are in a period of mourning for the Jewish people. Well, but that happened. The second Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, I said, in the year 70. We are now in 2017. We are almost 2,000 years away from that period. And yet we still remember it. For us, for the Jewish people today, for my contemporaries anyway, there's no question that the Holocaust of the Second World War is the greatest tragedy. A third of the Jewish people was exterminated. Incomparable number to any other period in Jewish history. My question is, what happened between the year 70 and 1939, which was the beginning of the Second World War? Did we have peace and tranquility? Well, there were many periods of development, of growth of the Jewish community intellectually, socially. In Spain, for instance, you had great poets. There were people that were politicians. There were people that were great students of the Talmud. In France, in England, in Poland, many institutions flourished where Jewish studies were very important, and studying in the Jewish tradition is the most important thing. So we had many important periods of development in Jewish history. But at the same time, we also had many periods of destruction. You know, there were 3 communities called the Shum communities, Speyer, Worms, and Mainz, that were tremendously developed, and there were massacres. One of the most beautiful prayers for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is called Unetane Tokef. And that was really composed by somebody who lived at that time of destruction. He had a friend who was a bishop, but the bishop insisted that he become a Christian, and he refused. So the bishop ordered that his arms be cut off, his legs be cut off, and when the man was practically dying, he asked to be taken to the synagogue, and there he composed, he recited at least a prayer that we recite to this very day, where we say that it depends upon God whether we live or die, whether we are well-to-do or not well-to-do, whether things run the way we want them to or they don't. And that is on Rosh Hashanah. That was from that period. There is a prayer called Av HaRachamim, God all merciful, that we say in the synagogue every Sabbath. I go to a synagogue in New York called Kehilat Jeshurun, and I like the way the rabbi introduces that prayer, and he says, everybody stand up and all say it together. And he says, we are saying this prayer in memory of the 6 million Jews that were assassinated during the Second World War, and in memory of all the tragedies that occurred to the Jewish people. Actually, that prayer is also from that period. In 1242, I think it was, in Paris, 20 or 24 wagons loaded with manuscripts were burned in Paris. Now, why is that so important? I say that is the 13th century. You know, the printing press, Gutenberg didn't live, he first came on the scene on the 15th century. You know, manuscripts in those days were very important books. There weren't many copies of one manuscript. Maybe some works that were lost then were lost forever. You know, Luther, with his revolution, he couldn't have done anything were it not for the printing press. He lived afterwards. So all his pamphlets and the fact that he wanted everybody to read the Bible, to be the interpreter of the Bible, could only be done with a printing press. And yet these books were burned before the printing press, so that many of them just plain disappeared. There was a guy by the name of Khmelnytsky in the 17th century, hordes that attacked Jewish communities. Practically there was no country in Europe that didn't expel their Jews at one time or another. In the 12th century already there was a blood libel against the Jews, that they needed blood in order to make matzah for Pesach. So that the history of the Jewish people, from the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash to the Second World War, wasn't a smooth period. There were moments of exaltation, of production, but there was also great destruction. So one asks oneself, why so much destruction in this world? But maybe this is the way nature is. According to the Kabbalah, some vessels that were involved in some cosmic dispute, destroyed each other, and that's how the universe came into being. Out of Shevirata Kelim, whatever that means. That the vessels were destroyed, the world was born. A woman gives birth with pain. In order for the bird to come out, the chicken to come out, you have to break the egg. It seems as if the world is made that construction can only come after a period of destruction. Well, the Jewish people have experienced a lot of these difficulties, have had to face challenges throughout their history. Maybe this is why we have developed our intellects, our will to survive. Practically the only people that has survived so many years in exile and still retains their national identity. Well, we live in an epoch when there is a state of Israel, but at the same time we know that anti-Semitism is growing in Europe. Something we thought was already exiled from the world after the Second World War is still a reality. But then again, the vigor and the determination of the Jewish people to survive and to progress and to build is stronger than ever. If we continue in that path of building, no matter what challenges the world presents us, we surely will survive and we will overcome it.